Good morning, 5th and 6th graders. So today we are going to be learning and talking about the basics of first aid. Does anybody know what first aid is? Good job. So first aid is basically giving somebody who is hurt or has some type of injury or is unconscious first aid and addressing whatever is going on with them until full medical attention is available to them. So we're going to start off by watching a short 5-minute video on a first aid kit that can give you some directions and help you out while you're in a classroom, or if you're out at recess, or if you're just at home. This can really help kids at a younger age get first aid. So
a lot of kids maybe aren't really familiar with the proper techniques of first aid, and people in general. There was a study in the UK that showed a quarter of people, if they came across an accident and didn't feel prepared to do something, they wouldn't even try. They would just sit and watch and wait for the EMS to show up, and that's not good. And this is actually something we've talked about before on the show. It's a talking first aid kit.
Love this.
And I want to bring it up again because I actually have a couple kids here that are going to help me demonstrate this. So Leo and Jet, you want to come on up and show me how to use this thing? All right. What?
Is that serial thing true?
Is the serial thing true? Tell you what, you guys, that cereal thing, it's only true for the really junk cereals with lots of sugar on it.
But is it true or is it not true?
Yeah, no, it's true that some cereals is really not good for you.
Is it true? Yes or no?
Yes, it's true. All right.
Show them how it works. They can be good shoppers.
All right, let's see. So that's fine. You look on the side and see nutrition facts. And see, look for the word sugar. Wait, see that? Sugar?
Yeah.
See, what is that number?
6.
6? So the sugar number is 6 on this, so that's good.
Oh.
So this is a good cereal.
Oh.
All right? Smells good, huh?
What an owie, Dr. Sears.
All right, so Mr. Leo's going to be our, is this a real owie? This is a pretend owie, but you're going to be a really good actor, right?
It's jelly. Eat it.
All right, so Leo, first.
I'll eat it.
Okay, so we just had an accident. We don't know what to do, right? So we're going to get our first aid kit, and I'm going to press play. Okay, good.
You have selected the red bleeding path.
Bleeding, good.
Ensure the area is safe and check victim for responsiveness.
Okay, pause. All right, is the area safe?
Yes.
All right, you want to check Leo, see if he's responsive? Just ask him what his name is.
What's your name? Theo?
Leo? All right, good, you're responsive. Okay, let's hit play, see what to do next.
Put gloves on.
Gloves.
Have victim sit or lie down if responsive.
Okay, pause. Okay, put the gloves on. Jet?
You want one?
No, you're doing everything.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm just supervising, making sure you do it right. Let's try to get your fingers in there. See this finger. Meanwhile, Leo is bleeding to death. We gotta hurry up.
Hang in there, Leo.
Leo.
You're being tough.
You're good. Okay, that's probably good enough, right? Okay. We gotta act fast because this is first aid. Okay, play.
Do not apply a tourniquet.
Okay.
It is usually not necessary.
Okay, pause. Don't apply a tourniquet. Do you know what a tourniquet is?
Yeah.
Good, because we're not going to use it. Okay, so next.
Well, not really, kind of, but...
Play.
Using direct pressure, press firmly on the wound with gauze sponges or large dressing for about 10 minutes.
Okay, pause. Okay, do you see any gauze on the kit here? That's what gauze is. Okay, now come over here. Leo's gonna hold his leg out, and then you're gonna put some direct pressure. Put the gauze on the wound. Ready? Like that, and you're gonna. Now what you're doing is stopping the bleeding. So you need to squeeze pretty hard, but not too hard. Not too hard. Okay, just gently hard. Okay, medium hard. Okay, let's see what to do next. Ready? Play.
Apply more dressings as needed.
All right. Pause. Let's get more dressings. You ready?
What am I going to do? Let's go on this one.
We're just going to do this. Here, I'll help you. Wrap it around. And, okay, here. Move your arms just a little, hands a little bit. Okay, Leo. Okay, good. Let's keep going.
What is
For
that?
minor cut sprays, bandage strips, and antibiotic ointment are in the gray basics pack.
Okay, good. So, you see the antibiotic ointment and Band-Aids? Let's put some of that on, okay?
Hold that.
Here, you want to get the ointment? Here, can I'll take this lid off. You can squeeze it on there. Okay, I'm going to just lift it off just a little bit. Oh, see, it's already stuck there. So, tell you what, let's put a new Band-Aid on.
No.
Let's just tear it off really quickly, right? No, you don't want that. Let's put... Oh, I should be wearing gloves too, but since Leo's got a fake wound. Okay, get the antibiotic ointment. Ready? Put it on. Squeeze it onto the Band-Aid. Can we type across? Get some O negative ready? Okay, so let's just put the antibiotic ointment on there. Really good. So, at this point, hopefully an adult has come around, right? So, but it's important. If somebody's bleeding, the most important thing to do is hold pressure on it, okay? And then find a big person to help you. All right? Is Leo better? Are you better? Feeling better now?
He's better.
All right, so now that we have watched that, I'm going to go ahead and pass out some supplies for this next activity. So I'm going to be passing out some Band-Aids, some alcohol wipes, maybe, some burn cream, some gauze, and some gloves, as well as a bandage wrap and some burn cream. So what I would like you to do is go ahead and get a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, and we will go ahead and get started on our activity. When I pass these out, I'm going to go ahead and give your group, each group will have a different scenario, so I need you to group up in a group of 3 or 4, and when you're done doing that, I will go ahead and give you your next directions. All right, did everybody find a group? Okay, so since every group has a different scenario, I will be walking around making sure that you guys don't need help with anything, or that if you guys have questions, that I'm there to answer them, as well as just checking up and making sure that you are understanding the activity. So when it comes to first aid, every scenario should have the same few steps. It should be 1, to assess the scene, so we're making sure that the scene is safe. The second one is making sure that we are making sure that our victim was or is responsive. And then the third step is to apply our gloves, and we always want to put gloves on and make sure that we are keeping our victim's blood away from our skin and away from any open cuts on our hands or anywhere else on our body. So we want to put gloves on to be safe. So every group has a different scenario, as I said earlier. So I want you, as a group, to go ahead and read your scenario and then decide together what is best to take care of your victim, or to take care of your scenario. So go ahead and start on that. This should take anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 minutes. So go ahead as a group and go ahead and start working on your scenario. All right, is everybody done? If your group isn't done, go ahead and raise your hand and let me know that you're not done yet, and then I'll give you just a few seconds. All right, good job. So, does anybody have any questions about their scenario, and about how they maybe addressed whatever happened to their victim, or maybe any questions about what they could do better next time? Okay, so a lot of you did a really good job. I walked around and saw some really good things, a lot of teamwork. A few groups had a little bit of trouble, but that's okay. We're all learning. We're all here to learn together. So I want to go ahead and demonstrate how to give first aid, I guess. I'm just going to give it to myself. But in this situation or activity, you would be doing it with your groups or with a partner. So I'm first I would have checked to see if the scene was safe. The scene is safe. And then I would have checked to see if the person is responsive, and I am responsive. So now I've gone ahead and applied my gloves, and I have some type of cut and bleeding or something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and say that my cut or I'm bleeding like right on my arm. So the first thing that I would do to the person who has a cut or whatever is go ahead and open up my alcohol pad, and then I would go ahead and apply the alcohol pad, just making sure that their wound is clean and doesn't have any blood or germs. And I would go ahead and wait for that to dry. If the person you're giving first aid to is bleeding a lot, you should go ahead and open up your gauze and go ahead and place that on the wound, and you want to apply pressure so that the bleeding stops. And then if the person bleeds through the gauze, you want to go ahead and apply more gauze, just so that it can soak up all the blood and it can stop the bleeding. So after you've done that, and if they stop bleeding, go ahead and clean it with alcohol wipe again, just to make sure that all the blood's off of there, or as much as possible is off of their cut or out of their wound. And then you want to go ahead and open a Band-Aid, or you can have bigger bandages as well for more serious cuts and such. And then you would go ahead and open the Band-Aid, and you would place it on them just like that, just to make sure that that Band-Aid can stop the bleeding as well, or if there's any other blood left, it can stop that. Another scenario could be that if I had some type of burn, like when my siblings got burnt by the stove at home or something, and they had maybe a burn on their arm, you would go ahead and run their burn under cold water, and make sure that you run it under there for a few seconds. We'll say like 30 to 45 seconds, to make sure that their burn is, like the skin around their burn has calmed down and stuff. Then you would want to go ahead and apply burn cream. So we would apply our burn cream, and then we would go ahead and put some gauze on their burn, and then go ahead and wrap it until there's an adult, or until some type of like EMS or paramedic or something. Just go ahead and wrap it and make sure that it's tight and that their burn is secure until there's some type of adult around. So now what I want you to do is I want you to partner up, and this one you can make up your own scenario. It shouldn't be too drastic, but at this point you can partner up and pick out your own scenario. It could be a cut or a broken bone. It can be a burn, whatever really. So what I want you to do is choose your scenario and then by yourself, independently, work out your scenario. So if my partner has, we'll say my partner has a gash on their head or on their shoulder or something. We are gonna go ahead and we're first gonna make sure the scene is safe. So the scene is safe and make sure that they're responsive and they're responsive. Then we're gonna go ahead and apply our gloves, and if they have a cut on their forehead or a cut on their shoulder, we're gonna go ahead and clean that with our alcohol wiper, our alcohol pad again, and we're gonna clean that off or wherever. We're just gonna say it's on the head for this one. And then we're gonna make sure that the bleeding stops. At this point, the bleeding has stopped. We don't need to use gauze or anything else to make sure that the bleeding is stopped. But now that it has, we're gonna go ahead and like apply our Band-Aid on there, and then just make sure that our person or our victim is okay and that they don't have anything else going on, maybe with their head, or make sure that they are just like fully conscious. Then you will go ahead and switch, and your partner will go ahead and choose a new scenario, and then will provide you with first aid, and however that applies to their scenario. So I would let my partner, I don't know, if I had a broken arm, I would let my partner take care of my arm and make sure that I have a C-splint on it and that they have bandaged it and wrapped it good enough until a paramedics or EMS could get here, or some type of adult. So go ahead and do that for just a few minutes. All right, good job. So now that we have gone over both scenarios multiple times, and we know kind of what we should do or what we shouldn't do when it comes to first aid, does anybody have any questions, or maybe you're confused about something, or you just don't quite understand why we do this instead of this? Does anybody have any sort of questions like that? Okay, so their question was, why do we put on our gloves before we assess the scene and make sure that the person is conscious and stuff like that? That's just so we are fully prepared before we even touch the person who is bleeding or has a broken bone. It's important just because we don't want to accidentally give them help without something protecting ourselves from their blood or from whatever else, from germs and things like that. So it's always important to go ahead and put on your gloves before you actually provide first aid, even before you assess the scene and make sure that the person is fully conscious. Any other questions? So at this time, if I had a student who was confused about some type of scenario, at this point I would let them give me first aid, and then I would be there to answer any questions that they had or fix if they were doing it wrong, just so that I can see firsthand how they're dealing with the situation, as well as maybe some of the mistakes that they're making, or maybe where they are getting a little bit confused in the steps that they should be taking. So yeah, and then I would go ahead and let them do it on me, and if they do it well, then we'll go ahead and we'll sit back down at our desks, and then this is the time where we'll have our discussion on just the lesson. So if my class were to sit down. So now we are going to have our discussion about first aid and any questions that you guys have when it comes to providing first aid. So now that we know more about it and how to do it on simple things like cuts and burns and bones, sort of, is there any way that we can maybe practice more, or maybe make sure that we really have the hang of it when it comes to like providing first aid? Is there things like maybe practicing on your friends, maybe asking mom and dad, like, hey, can I practice my first aid skills on you? Because first aid skills are super important when it just comes to everyday life. You never know when someone will need first aid. So now that we have talked about that, does anybody have any questions about anything else first aid related? Yeah, so it's always important that if you see somebody who's hurt or see somebody who's in need of first aid, that you give it to them confidently, and that you have the skills to give them first aid. So, for example, if there was somebody who was riding their bike in your neighborhood and fell off their bike and hit their head and got a really bad cut on their arm, it's important that you go to that person, or it could be a kid in this case, since most of you are younger. It's important to give them first aid and make sure that you confidently are keeping them aware of what you're doing and keeping them calm, letting them know that it's going to be okay, and just really making sure that you, with your first aid skills, can handle whatever type of wound they have until, like I said, EMS or paramedics and stuff like that are available. And if it's an adult who you see in your neighborhood and this has happened to them, maybe go grab mom or dad, maybe whoever you live with who's an adult who maybe can help them, then that would be really helpful too. We're going to go ahead and watch another short little video on just first aid and a little bit of CPR. Just maybe some things that you can learn quickly from this little video. It'll give you some more information than what I gave you, but it'll still help you out and stuff like that with first aid.
This is Aid.
Hello.
He's going to show us how to perform first aid. And this is Bob. Bob is the unluckiest guy in the world.
Wabby.
You will see why. Aid and Bob decided to go on a camping trip by taking the bus. Head injury. You should apply a cold compress, for example, an ice pack or frozen vegetables to reduce the swelling and pain. Nosebleed. Pinch the soft part of the nose, just below the bony ridge. Make sure they lean forward and breathe through the mouth to prevent blood from entering the windpipe. Heat stroke. The person's skin may become hot or red, and they may experience a rise in body temperature. Apply a cool wet cloth or towel to cool the skin, and drink cool water slowly. Hypothermia. The person may be shivering, pale, and cold to touch. Warm the person by wrapping them in a blanket and giving them warm drinks. Choking. Hit them firmly on their backs between the shoulder blade 5 times to dislodge the object. Allergies. The person may develop a rash, itchiness, or swelling of their face, hands, or feet. Burns. Cool the burn under cool running water for at least 10 minutes. Loosely cover the burn with a plastic wrap or a clean plastic bag to reduce the pain and prevent infection. Bleeding. Put pressure on the wound to stop or slow the blood flow. Unconscious. Check breathing by tilting their head backwards while looking and feeling for breath. If the person is breathing, move them onto their side and tilt their head back. If the person is not breathing, perform CPR, though certified only. Always remember to call for an ambulance in case of an emergency.
Alright, so now that we have watched that, does anybody else have some questions on maybe some things that we've seen in the video, or maybe the way that they handled it in their little cartoon? Yes. So if somebody is having a heart attack or they think that they're having a heart attack, should you give them first aid? So the answer to that is no, not unless you are, CPR. Should you give them CPR? No, you should not give them CPR unless you are CPR certified. If you do give them CPR, that can create a lot of problems. So just don't give anybody any CPR unless you are certified. I am certified to give CPR and first aid, so yeah. Like I said, don't give it to anybody who guess, doesn't need it, or if you don't know how to give CPR, don't give CPR. So what are some things that we've learned today from this lesson, or maybe from our activities, or from our group? So yeah, we've learned the basics of CPR. I mean, first aid, obviously. We've learned how to take care of burns and cuts and things like that. Anything else? Yeah, we've learned that we should try to keep them calm as possible until we have either given them first aid or until EMS or paramedics arrive to give them full medical attention. So yes, that's a very good one. Any other ones? So yeah, we have learned how partners or how a group can really help take care of the situation, and how teamwork can really affect the person and if they get good first aid. So good job today. Now you should all know the basics of first aid and how to perform it. Hopefully you won't have to, but if you do, now you know how to give and provide first aid confidently. So again, does anybody have any questions about first aid? If you have any questions, I can answer. I would love to. So by the raise of hands, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Is anybody confused about anything? Like I said earlier, if you're confused about something, you can go ahead and you can practice your first aid skills on me, and I will be here to answer your questions, to redirect you, to make sure that you're on the right track when it comes to giving good first aid and really just making sure that your skills are where they need to be. Okay, yeah, you can definitely provide first aid to me. If you'd like to do that right now, you can come do that. So like at this point, the student would be giving me first aid, and then I would be answering their questions, redirecting them if they're doing something wrong, maybe telling them like, that might not work as well, but here's what will work. Maybe better. Giving them more ideas on how to keep me or the victim or whoever calm, and making sure that they know that, hey, it's okay, like I'm going to give you first aid, I'm going to take care of whatever you have going on until someone else gets here. And then I would have the students go home and practice their first aid skills on their parents, or maybe some siblings or friends or something, just so this can be taken outside and applied outside of the classroom. I would have them, like I said, practice on parents, friends, siblings, and then if someone happens to have something small like a paper cut or something, then they can give that person first aid, or just like clean up their cut or whatever. So